critical bill passed in the state Senate yesterday aimed at protecting firefighters from the dangerous chemicals known as PFAS.
The long-term goal is to eliminate the chemicals in firefighting equipment entirely. Western Mass News reporter Olivia Hickey joins us live in studio after getting answers on what this legislation would do.
Abby and Chris, while this is a win for first responders, I'm told there are still steps that still need to be taken to ensure firefighters that they're not putting their lives in further danger while working to save others. Imagine the gear needed to do your work is dangerous to your health. Firefighters Union President Rich McKinnon says this is what firefighters face every day.
We know the risk when we took an oath to be a firefighter that it has inherent dangers, and we're willing to take those risks, but quite frankly, PFAS in our gear is not one of those risks.
PFAS, also called forever chemicals, can be found in firefighting turnout gear, worn when responding to emergencies like fires, leaving the firefighter covered in toxic chemicals that carry health hazards.
And we're seeing issues with reproductive problems with our female firefighters, totally linked to this PFAS and other exposures that we encounter. We're getting cancers also that typically the normal citizen doesn't get. One of them being testicular cancer. We're seeing males in their 50s get testicular cancer, which is uncommon.
Work is being done to banish the chemicals here in the Bay State. The latest step, a bill passed by the state Senate Monday, an act relative to the reduction of certain toxic chemicals in firefighter personnel protective equipment. This will require companies selling the gear to provide written notice to the purchaser that the protective gear contains PFAS, the reason why, and list the specific chemicals in it. If the bill becomes law, the new regulations could be implemented as early as next year and ban PFAS from the gear starting January 1st, 2027.
The Senate want to make sure that we stood fast, especially with our firefighters.
In the meantime, fire departments across our area will continue to take caution when handling their personal protective gear. In West Springfield, Lieutenant Tony Spear tells us this includes cleaning.
You know, dirty turnout gear is it's hanging on to all those carcinogens and chemicals that we took out of the fire with us, and it seeps right into the gear. So getting those through our gear washers and our gear dryers are very important. These things are designed specifically to take these chemicals from combustion and the fires right out of the gear.
There's still another step before the bill gets to Governor Maura Healey's desk. The House of Representatives still has to pass it. But the clock is ticking. The last day of the current session is tomorrow. Reporting in studio for Western Mass News, I'm Olivia Hickey.